call tonight's city council meeting to order. Karen, can we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Husnick,
Here.
Councilmember Munson,
Here.
Councilmember Byström,
Here.
Councilmember Valento,
Here.
and Mayor Bain.
Here. I'd like to invite everyone to rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So you have an agenda before you this evening. I will entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose, and motion carries. Our next item this evening is open forum. Open forum is any interested party's opportunity to address council. And we do not have any open forum this evening. So we will move on to our consent agenda. Consent agenda items 6A through 6E are for council consideration. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve consent agenda A through E.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose, and consent agenda is approved. Moving on to our regular agenda. Regular agenda item 7A is voter precinct redistricting. And Karen, do you want to walk us through an update?
I will. So at the last council meeting, you had in your packet information about voter redistricting, and you have that in your packet again this week. Last week, some questions were asked about locations, how many houses are in certain locations, how many voters do we expect? Will the state redistricting create an issue for Forest Lake? At that point in time, as far as the lines, the redistricting lines being drawn, my conversations with Washington County, we didn't think that it was going to affect Forest Lake. I hadn't received the maps from them at that point. They came a couple days later, and when we went through everything and I talked to the county about it, the state lines do in fact affect Forest Lake. So the congressional lines that were drawn do not, but the legislative lines were redrawn to split our precinct 1 basically in half horizontally down Broadway. So there's now north half and the south half. What I have done is had to redraw all the lines that you saw from the last council meeting, taking into account that split, and then also taking into account where are we going to put these voters, how are we going to separate our precincts now with the voters. Before it was very convenient, we were just going to move a block of them into precinct 2. We have to also account for the growth that will happen in basically precinct 5, that southwest corner of Forest Lake. So I have a few maps. I'm going to put this up on the screen. There's a couple maps that I presented you with that show the redistricting of the legislative lines that were redrawn. So the redistricting of the state. Let's see if we can get this to work. What is this, Dan? Do you know what that is? Can I cancel that? Give me 1 second here and we'll get this up on the screen. Should work this week. Last week, or 2 weeks ago it didn't. Let's see. Let me find the maps here. So this is what our current, this map is what the current, hold on 1 second. This map right here is what the current precinct lines look like. So you can see precinct 1 is up in this corner, and where the split was comes down along Broadway Avenue. The next map is going to show where the split is. And the maps that I provided get increasingly closer to or zooming in. So this is where the legislative line was drawn, the dashed line. So it cuts basically right across our precinct 1, and then down underneath the lake. But it's nice, it follows underneath the lake, the border that we had already drawn for our precinct lines. So really, the only precinct affected is going to be precinct 1. Here again is another map showing where those lines go. And then finally, the closest map that I could get in showing how it cuts this precinct 1. So precinct 1 comes down Lake Street and then across 11th Avenue. You can see where that legislative line was drawn, right through the middle of precinct 1. This is the new map, and I can say I'm really proficient at GIS now. I've gotten good, except not so good on this one. Well, there we go. So this is the new proposed map with the new proposed lines. Precinct 1, of course, will be split. Precinct 2 is going to proposed to become larger. So this bottom half of precinct 1 will be added to what is already precinct 2. So all this green area will become the new precinct 2. On that map, you can see there in the precinct 2, the new proposed precinct 2 area, just the digital or dashed lines that go around, there's 987 addresses in that area. So that's what's going to be added to this portion of precinct 2. We also need to account for voters in precinct 5. What the county would like to see is less than 4,000 voters at each location. And so the new proposed map shows this section. This was the old section. Precinct 5 came across and then straight down Harrow Avenue. The new proposed map shows this whole section here becoming part of precinct 4. So the line, basically the vertical line, will go from Harrow Avenue over to 61 instead and come all the way down Highway 61. In this section, Kathy, I believe, had asked, how many voters do we have in this area? It's hard to determine how many actual voters, but I can determine how many addresses based off of the GIS. So in this section, there's 827 addresses that we currently have. In this section down here, there's 123. So total 950 addresses in this whole new section. We do have some development that sounds like it's going to be coming into this area. And then the main portion of future development will be over in this section of precinct 5. If we take these addresses, so I guess the numbers and what the county had passed on to me is that roughly about 60% of eligible voters in Forest Lake voted. I mean, I did some really crude math and said with 950 addresses, if we have 2 voters per household, 2 adults in the household, and double that, we're looking at about another 1,800 voters. If only 60% of them are voting, we're at about 1,200. Now we need to add that into the current precinct 4 voters, which was 1944. An important thing to keep in mind too is that that's the total number of voters in that precinct, but not the total number of voters at the poll.
Right.
We do have the mail-in votes, and as more and more people get accustomed to that and realize it's a great option, I don't think that that's going, because if we add the votes all together, I don't think that that's going to compromise our polling location. If we factor in people can mail in their vote. So we are nearing that, we're getting up there for Hosanna as a polling location. But again, that's accounting for all of these addresses and additional growth and mail-in votes. So we should be okay over the next 10 years for this whole area down here. It's going to alleviate pressure on precinct 5 because all of these votes will be moving over to Hosanna instead of at Headwaters. And then taking a look at this, precinct 2 had 1,943 voters in this area, eligible, votes that came in just this section. We can add these addresses to that, or again, say that we have, roughly 2,000, we'll just estimate 2,000 voters, 60% of that, and add that in. So we're far from that 4,000 total at that precinct.
Can the senior center accommodate the additional numbers?
Well, the the room there is actually a larger capacity than what we have upstairs in the community room. The large multipurpose room upstairs there at the senior center is larger than the capacity that we have upstairs in the community room. So, you know, I think it should be fine. I don't, based on the numbers, it doesn't seem like there's gonna be a compromise. I didn't receive, any, calls, notification, anything from the county, anything from anybody at the senior center, that this would be an issue. County seems like it's gonna be okay, as far as size. So I think it's gonna be okay. I think this is gonna alleviate everything for the city over the next 10 years. And of course, we'll have to look at it again when we do, you know, the redistricting event in 2032. We'll have to look at it again and see. I don't know how much there is potential for growth in this area. I'm not really familiar with what it looks like up here, if it's wetland or, you know, if growth is gonna happen in these areas, we may have to take a look at this whole area again in terms of how and where people are gonna vote. The main concern was all of this area down here. And so we're addressing that. And then, of course, the legislative line. We're addressing that by moving this section into Precinct 2. So, that's what I've come up with. I'm looking for feedback. You don't have to make a decision tonight on this. You can table it until the next meeting. We do still have time based on the schedule. But next meeting, March 14th, would be probably the last day we want to think about this and take a vote on that at that time then, before I can get it into the county.
Thank you, Karen. I know
There's a lot to think about.
changed in a very short amount of
It did.
time, and thank you for making the adjustments and getting the additional counts in. Council, what are your thoughts as to timing of approval? The resolution is on page 69 of our packet. If we have questions or additional things we would like Karen to look at, we can certainly make those requests, and we could table this to a future meeting. Otherwise, if we are ready to move ahead, we could take action tonight.
I personally don't have any problem with the changes. I mean, the whole idea is to make it equitable for everybody and to make it as easy as possible. The only question I have is how do we get the word out to the folks where they have a different polling place now, so.
So the county is, because we have a joint powers agreement with the county will send out notifications to residents with the new,
With
with the
and
new
let 'em know.
cards, that they
Okay.
will have a new
Sure.
location. We'll put all the information, of course, on our website for people to really double check their polling locations. But the county will take care of making sure there's notification sent to each individual resident.
All I'm saying is that I do support the proposal, and I wouldn't have any issue voting on it tonight unless somebody else has an issue with it, so.
Any open questions or additional requests that we would like to make of Karen?
Did I cover, Kathy, the information you were looking for that particular area? Okay.
You just don't want to make a mistake that will, shift things dramatically another direction when you factor everything in.
Yeah.
That could potentially happen over the course of the next 10 years, so.
A lot can happen in 10 years, that's the only thing, but what do you do, because you don't know,
Right.
so.
Yeah, in the next 10 years, there's probably going to be, have to add another precinct or two, just based on growth in the current Precinct 5 area.
Yeah. To that point, though, I do think that moving the line over for Precinct 4 does accommodate and helps to balance that out, because Precinct 4 is not likely to have that density, and so I think this is a good interim step.
Yeah, and one of my concerns was, people down in this section of Precinct 4 down here, if there was growth in this area, having to go all the way over to Hosanna. I mean, it's not like you're going 30 miles, but you're still having to go to the other side of the precinct. It was nice to think they could just drive straight up 61 right into Precinct 2. But the other side of that is, we can find another, 2 years from now, if necessary, or 4 years from now, if necessary, we can find another polling location, search for another polling location within Precinct 4 that's more centrally located if something comes up. You know, maybe Forest Hills Golf Club would be willing to facilitate that for us, you know, so we can move the polling location.
Okay.
We just can't move the lines.
Right.
All right, I'm not hearing any other questions. Anyone ready to?
Yeah, Madam Mayor,
Make motion?
if there's an objection, I would vote that we approve Resolution 02-28-22-01, establishing the precincts and polling places in the city of Forest Lake, Minnesota, Washington County.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this? Hearing none. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose, and motion carries. Thank you for the work on that, Karen.
You're welcome.
All right, next up for council's consideration is the planning commission appointment, and let me get this in front of me. We have the good fortune, Don Steeler, who's currently chairing our airport commission, has offered his services to serve in a dual role, staying on the airport commission, but then adding in and filling the open vacancy that we currently have on the planning commission. Prior to living in Minnesota, Don has served on a planning commission in another community, so anytime we are able to take advantage of great leadership and some experience, I'm happy to do so. And so with that, I would move that that council approves the appointment of Don Steeler to the Airport Commission for a 3-year term. And I said airport, I meant Planning Commission for a 3-year term, and just to confirm that he will be maintaining his Airport Commission seat as well. Is there a second?
I will second that, Mara, knowing that I know Don Steeler. I work with him on the Airport Commission, and I think he'd be a good addition to the Planning Commission.
Excellent. There's a motion and a second. Any additional discussion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose, and motion carries. All right, our next item this evening is an item that we've had a fair amount of council discussion on, and staff tells me that we are ready to make this transition. As we have started to realign our liaison appointments to better align with how we are managing our different facilities within the city. We've had some historical discussion on creating an athletic facilities advisory committee. And so with that, I would like to move that council approve the appointment of Councilmember Bystrom and Councilmember Munson to that Athletic Facility Advisor Committee. And we look for this committee to be effective on April 1st, and that would give sufficient time to transition off of current structure into that new structure. Any questions on that? Actually, so motion, is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Any questions, discussion? All right, with that, all those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose, and motion carries. That ends this evening's regular agenda. We're going to move into a discussion phase. Just a reminder for anybody who is watching, discussion phase or workshop topics are a working session of council. Anything that is discussed this evening that would require official council action will take place at a future meeting. But we did want to have some discussion and update related to infrastructure. And Patrick, are you starting us on this?
I will happily start. As most of you are aware, the economy has been pretty interesting the last few months, actually starting sometime last year. We're seeing an enormous amount of inflation and challenging supply chain, getting parts, getting equipment. We know that police cars are 14 months out. We know fire trucks are probably 14 plus another 6 months out. Plow trucks, again, if we ordered one now, probably wouldn't be until mid-23. So all of that in and of itself makes the challenge to keep our equipment rolling. But the other portion of that is the incredible increases we're seeing in the price of all of these items. And I've set a communication with the council, breaking this out into a couple of areas. The first being the water treatment plant. The second being paving North Shore Circle, and then, I should say, some work on North Shore Circle, and then finally the 2022 paving plan. All those are presenting staff with a heck of a challenge to try to keep prices and budgets intact, and we're not making it. So let me go through the water treatment plant. We can stop there and we can talk. The water treatment plant, as you know, we needed a new water treatment plant to keep up with supply. Development's coming. We need to have water ready for development. We planned for this quite a while. The plans were bid out, and we had an estimate of $8.2 million to fund this project with the GEO bond that you all passed in 2019. That's, we did a rate study, we did a capital, we looked at it really closely. Unfortunately, we now have had a bid at $8.47 million for that same project, which results in a $279,000 deficit on Water Plan 4. In addition to Water Plan 4, we had planned for a secondary source well for number 7 and a rehabilitation of water well 6. The reason we need that is we need supply. You can build a big plant, but if you don't supply it, it's not going to do you much good, right? So the new well was number 7. We have an existing well 6 that needs in desperate need of redrilling and recoring and whatever they do to wells. I'll let Ryan figure that out in a minute here. But and that had an engineering total of $1.648 million. So if you take both of those, the plant and the wells, we had a total updated project cost of $10,128,241. That resulted in a gap of $1.9 million. We are $1.9 million short of what we need to complete the project. And that does sound shocking, and it is. We know we needed to put the wells in. We know we needed to put the water treatment plant in. So the question is, what do we do with this? Well, being that I can not recommend not doing this project. Again, we have infrastructure needs. We have a new development coming. We're going to need the capacity to A, pump water, and B, treat water. I don't see an alternative here. The bid has been out and received, and it was supposed to come back to you today, but we pulled that off the agenda so we could talk to you a little bit more about this before we surprised you and said, hey, guess what, pass this, will you? So being that it's vital, I think I need to recommend to you that when this bid comes back, that we approve this and that we figure out a funding source to how to fill it. This type of project is a very large project. It's not going to be completed in 1 year. It's going to be over at least 2 years. So that gives us a little bit of time to figure out how we're going to pay for basically the second half of the project. And I only have 2 alternatives basically for you. One is, I think first and foremost, we need to wait until the 2021 audit is complete and see what the shape of the water fund is. There's no sense for us to tell you that we have a 100% locked-in solution until we see what the end of the year numbers are. So that would be sometime in June, I believe, that usually comes out. So we'll return to you probably in June or July and say, okay, we've looked at this. Here's what we're recommending to how we're going to fund the second half of this water project. And it's either we're going to be able to, 3 ways. Basically, we have enough surplus to do that with in cash, fund balance, as you know it. B, without crippling the fund long term. I mean, we need to make sure that that's healthy and stays, and we've gone through the discussion. B, we and I'll get to this in a minute, we have planned to have a bond this year when we talked about roads and other things. So we're later on recommending that that's put off until 2023 at this point. So include that funding in the 2023 bond as a part of the package of what we bond. Or C, and we're going to have to do it anyways, we're going to have to look at rates. And we will engage Ellers again this time to take a look at our new rates. First of all, we'll update our capital improvement plan so that we know there's everything in there, and ask them, okay, what's the best way to finance this? And we'll have discussions, very detailed discussions in the capital plan with Ryan and Dave, but also very detailed recommendations from Ellers to say, okay, what are the rates going to have to be? Now, when we did the last rate study in 2018, it had some pretty significant rate increases. And then as the later years showed, it kind of tapered down to some more acceptable annual increases. I don't know if that's going to happen again or not. I just don't know the issue of how that's going to land. Is it going to be a 3%? Will that be enough? Will it be 5%? Hopefully it doesn't get into double digits, but again, with what we're facing with development and what we're facing with costs right now, it's only a big guess on my part. So that's really what we're talking about in Water Plan 4 and the additional wells. So I'll stop there and ask if there's questions on the water plant. And again, this is actually, and I forgot to say, this is our number one priority. If we go on to the next things, this is still our number one priority. We cannot let that water system slow down. We have, again, and not to sound like a broken record, we have development, we have needs. We're going to have to go forward sooner or later.
Great. Questions? Council may have.
A couple. So we can award the project even though we aren't 100% clear how we're going to fund it.
Yeah, I think we can, I don't think there's any legal reason we can't award a project. We just encumber ourselves to figuring out a way to pay it.
Okay.
And again, since this is a 2-year project, we have enough funding for the first year, obviously. It's the second year we have to plan, and we will have a solution mid to sometime in the budget cycle. We'll figure out a solution to what we have to do there. And my guess is it's going to be a bond, and we're going to tie that to some other street projects and other things next year when we go back, and we'll talk about the bond in a little bit. So.
And then I guess my second question would be, I mean, you talked about 3 alternatives: rate increase, bonding, and then wait for the audit and see where we are cash-wise.
Yep.
Can we combine those strategies?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, we can, we have, even the suggestion reward is one thing, but then how to pay for it, and we will look at all kind of where it balances out.
Yeah.
If the water fund is healthy because we have continued to, in the last 3 years, have rate increases based on the water rate study we did in 18, we'll see. I mean, it really depends on what comes out of the water fund and then what comfortable coverage we're at as far as cash in the water fund.
Okay.
It'll be a balance. Maybe we can take some cash and not have to bond so much, or
Right.
maybe we can take some cash, bond a little bit, and raise rates a bit. That's why I'm going to recommend to you and have Ellers come in and do a rate study and show us what options do we have based on a revised capital improvement plan that addresses all of at least the next 5 to 10 years of capital improvements on the water fund.
Yeah.
When you- Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm a fan of cash whenever
Be nice,
possible. And I think that would, again, kind of mitigate some of the bonding and potentially mitigate a higher rate increase as well.
Yep.
And that's, if we can kind of balance that out, I think that would be favorable in my
I agree.
estimation anyway. Employ all 3 strategies.
It's kind of a catch-22, because you tell people you're borrowing money, the taxpayers, and they go, what are you doing that for, But at the time, we were borrowing money at, 1% or something like that?
Correct.
Yeah, we were able to do some projects where we weren't kicking the can down the road, because now we're in a situation where now inflation's taken over, and we actually made a good deal on that. And I'm just sorry that we couldn't have
So am I.
backed it up a little tiny bit here.
Yeah.
Because it really was a good deal. And so now we're going to be scrambling because the bond numbers are going to go up. The rates are going to go up for sure, and along
Correct.
with everything else, including blacktop and
Cost of projects.
materials of all different sorts. And so it's a lesson for all of us that when you see that can get kicked down the road sometimes, when you have an opportunity, a golden opportunity to get something done, doesn't happen for whatever reason, and then here we are, so.
Yeah, and maybe I put this a little bit out of order, and we should talk about the bonding itself and the discussion, couple of meeting discussion with Ellers on what the bonding looks like.
Before you transition to the bond discussion, can we, when you mention rate increase, do you also, is also on the table as part of that rate increase fees? So it's, like sack and whack type fees
Yeah,
or
we haven't
things?
looked at the
Would
sack
that
and
be
whacks.
part of that analysis?
I think we have to look at
It's
the
not sack, 'cause
entire,
it's not
I think we
sewer,
have to
but-
look at the entire package. I
Okay.
mean, one of the things with, obviously, as you know, with the sack and whack, we don't want to get too far off of the scale compared to our neighbors, but
Agree.
we're really not that far off the scale on that. So I think if we have to adjust it a bit, I think we'd be okay with that, but we will look at all the revenues, no matter what it is. And we will also explore, the one thing we don't know is how much, there's been some major federal monies for infrastructure put out there. We do have some infrastructure money waiting to decide how to use it.
Yeah.
We will also consider, do we use that for this or part of this or some of the other things that we're talking about? So we really have a lot of financial package work to do before we get to the budget process, and because a lot of that will intertwine, and we'll see, if we can find better grants for water or something that funds some of this stuff, we will, or if we use infrastructure money that we've got from the feds, we will as well.
Yeah, and I know we have to be careful with staying in line with what other communities are doing and how we're adding on to those development costs, but I say that in this circumstance because we need to add capacity because of that development, and so there's always the balance of how much do existing residents pay for future expansion, and let's make sure we're doing what we can to balance that.
Absolutely, the adding capacity is a direct result of continuing development, there's no doubt about it.
Okay. Sorry, I
Oh,
took
no,
you off
that's
track from, I think you were gonna,
Yeah, since this
Talk
is
a little
all
further about
bond
bonding.
stuff, I mean, I wanted to go back, I think probably should have put the bond first, but we have had discussions with Ellers over the last month regarding, is it a good time to bond, is it not a good time to bond? Things laid out in the memo as all the increases in costs and everything like that. Do we want to pay an extra $30,000 now for a plow truck and just have equipment certificates, or does it make sense to see if those surcharges fall off? Same thing with some of the other issues that we're looking at. So in speaking with Ellers, talking through the scenarios of all the increased costs and some of the surcharges, and with oil and gas prices, particularly in the last week going crazy, it's not such a bad idea to wait on all of that. It's Ellers' opinion that even though rates may go up, they're not going to go up that significantly. They can't go up that fast to say we better jump now. It will be a small increase, but you won't be seeing 4% bonds or 5% bonds. You'll see 2.5 maybe at the outset, we think anyways. Again, if all this inflation woes and all the oil woes and all the current political and supply situations ebb by then, next year may be entirely different. It may go back to where it's at. We just can't tell, but they don't believe it's going to go to a point where interest rates are so out of whack that it's going to should stop us from bonding. It makes a lot of sense in their discussions, and I agree that we should wait a little bit and see what happens. So that's why we're going to recommend not bonding this year for streets. As you recall, we were going to, in the budget deliberations, we talked about a $10 million bond and $8 million for streets and $2 million for equipment certificates and replacement. As the memo, and we're going to talk about in a minute, we're going to scale that back and see if we can wait on some of the larger pieces of equipment and scale back our paving, just to wait. We know everybody at this table doesn't want to wait to pave, but we have to balance costs and bonding and give you a responsible options in how we're doing. This is what we're thinking the most responsible at this point, is to wait and see what happens and not panic and say we have to go to bonds because we're not paid $30,000 when next year it may not be there. Although it may be there, we'll know that. Maybe they won't lower the prices back. But a $30,000 add to a snowplow truck that's really outrageous. It really is. But it's a result of all the supply chain and all the things that they're having a problem with. So that's why we're going to recommend that we delay the bond at this point.
You would think that would get better if the supply chain loosens up a little bit, but
That's what we're hoping, but you never know.
where's your crystal ball? I mean,
Maybe about this, but, so, questions on the bond part of it, I mean, that's kind of we've been going over this and trying to figure out the best mechanical way, and I think it's best to wait and see what happens. The second item on the list is.
Patrick, I think Ryan had a quick point to make. Go ahead.
Mayor, City Council, I'll just give you some more information related to water plant treatment 4. I think that helps in your decision-making here. Remember, this is the last of 3 water treatment projects that the city did. That's, we budgeted and scoped the projects back in 2018. That went for the bond purchase in 19. So, this project's been sitting since that time period. Obviously, pricing's gone up, but the scope significantly has changed here on this project, where we first did some test drilling, trying to find water source on the compost site. We weren't able to find any water down there, so we knew we couldn't put a well there to the level of capacity that we would need to have a municipal treatment plant. Thus, then we came up to the tower area, so, you spent quite a bit of money doing that process. Then we went through the process here at this site. We are, then other things added to the project here that include the, wetland impacts, so we're having to purchase some wetland credits and stuff like that, to make that site work. But at the end of the day, yeah, well 6 needs some rehab work since the time it was originally scoped, and then adding the redundant well, the total project cost that's in the memo. But that includes everything and anything we've gone through to date, the soil borings, everything in the estimate to finish the project. So, we're pretty zeroed in on that point too. But at the end of the day, the test pumping here was very successful. We were able to get 1,500 gallons per minute. So doing the math, what you want to know is how many households that's going to make. If we ran that well 24 hours a day, we'd be able to generate 2.1 million gallons of water out of that well. Average household has 2.74 people in it, per calculation. So say 274 gallons average day household that uses. That's 7,600 single-family homes we'll be able to now provide water for. So, and then on the backside of that, we got 3 residential developments, just residential. We got some apartment stuff and some other things going on too. But if I just take one of those average developments, some are over 100 houses, some are less, some are gonna have more than 30 acres developed, some will have less, but I just used 100 households, 30 acres. So the 100 houses is gonna generate $360,000 in WAC charges and approximately $135,000 in just area charges. Those charges are supposed to go to these types of projects.
Yeah.
You got 3 of those in the queue, potentially a 4th way down the road, but then you got some other apartment stuff that's potentially there and or some commercial stuff too, so.
Yep.
So maybe if you did have to bond, worst case scenario, it's a short-term bond that could be repaid with the development costs.
Perfect.
Really helpful context,
Yeah,
Ryan.
that's good. Thank you.
Okay, similarly, North Shore Circle Street and Sewer Rehabilitation. This project was to reconstruct North Shore Circle and replace 2 aging lift stations, and then replace that with only 1 lift station. The project engineering estimate was at $2.725 million. A portion of that, $1 million, was included in the 2019 bond proceeds. And then the low bid came in at $3,153,778, which was basically $428,000 over budget. So again, we're seeing increased costs, probably labor short, supplies are short. Fortunately, you have a very healthy sewer fund. It's been really healthy. We took care of that, and when we started the rate adjustments, we knew that when we did all the rate studies, that the sewer fund was in better shape than the water fund. So I believe I believe that we have the capital in reserve in the sewer fund, that we can just shift the cost of some of this project all to the sewer fund, since it's a big sewer fund construction project, and that the sewer fund can cover the excess of $428,000 without changing rates, without borrowing, without anything else. The sewer fund has the capital to do that. That's why we try to keep a healthy balances in these funds to make some of these adjustments when some of these come along. Questions on the North Shore Circle and sewer rehab?
Pretty straightforward.
Yeah, that one's, yeah.
It is what it is.
And then finally, the 2022 annual paving program, that is currently scheduled to go out to bids shortly on March 10th. And Ryan can have some more comment, but given the pricing that we're seeing, we are seeing somewhere up to, 40% increases in paving?
Did you say 48?
I said 40 to 50% increases in paving costs.
Is that
Again,
labor? What's driving that?
oil,
So, I mean,
labor.
when we just compared, we compared the bid item pricing that we got for North Shore Circle Street Utility Project to last year's projects. Bituminous, low bid was 30% higher per ton of the same exact projects. You don't even want to know what second and third were, right? And then just go down line items, we are ranging anywhere from 30%, and there's a few items that are well over 200%, sanitary sewer wise. But then just for something in comparison where we've gone in time, we compared to what these prices were with the 15th Street project, which had similar types of bid items, quantities and stuff like that. Generally, everything's 80% to 100% higher than what we paid in that year. And, that's just where we're at. I mean, there's no way we could have guessed we would have jumped 30% in 1 year in bituminous per ton. And that's what we're seeing generally all over right now. So that's why then we should probably pause on the street project. Because, there's gonna be some potholes left here and there and some of that stuff, or shrink it up and save some of the funding. But on North Shore Circle Street Utility Project, we're eliminating 2 lift stations from the 60s and replacing them with 1 brand new one. And the reason this project got booted out of the 17-18 project is because there were way more issues that we discovered once we started doing our field assessments. So we walked away from that knowing we were coming back in this year to do it, because I was with Dave in the field that day. We would pop one manhole, it was full of sewer. The second one was dry. The next one was full. I mean, we had bad pipe and a lot of shallow services through here too. And there's also some private utility issues. Xcel Energy wants to come through and replace all the gas main while we're doing our project too. So there's other things we've coordinated with this that, you get in and out, and it did include an alternate in that bid. So we're basically done in that area and don't come back for 20 years after this type of a project.
Refresh, so 2022, do you have a map of what that original plan was, what the original footprint was for the plan?
For the 22
The
local
origin-
street improvement project, that's on the administrator's memo here, that included, we scaled that down to just stay where we think the bid would come into. So that right now currently includes 231st Street, Hilo and Hilo Court, which is out northeast part of the city, and then also 230th Street Lane.
Do we have obviously it's gonna be much higher than we would have projected. Do we have a sense of if we were to be able to move forward with that 2022 project, what it would run us? I mean, I'm just, obviously we have a little discovery to be able to make a fully informed decision on some of this, but I'm just curious about, how we might be utilizing those federal funds potentially. Could
The
we-
total project cost was estimated at $860. We have those 2 areas that I highlighted broken out, so, 300,000 could cover one area for construction, 340 could cover another area of construction.
Okay,
But then you do get, lower quantity and
Right.
maybe your price goes up a little more, but
yeah. And I'm all about pausing a little bit in the hopes that some of these costs come down, but, just trying to paint a full picture.
Have we heard anything about any of that funding trickling down to us little folks?
Yeah, we have, I believe it's $1.5 million from the December bill that have until the December 31st of 2024 to spend. That is really tilted towards infrastructure. So we need to make those decisions on how that money is going to be allocated, and whether it's water and sewer, water and sewer is the big one, actually. I mean, they really, in that bill, they pushed for water, basically water improvements more than anything else. Yeah, we need to decide how that is. We haven't heard the rest about any other of the bills or any of the federal funding and how that's coming down, but we know we have at least $1.5 million from the feds.
Okay.
I mean, it's nice to do roads, but to pay that much money in for that little a spot, I mean, that's, if you drive those two areas, you know, $900,000 to do those two sections, that's, you know, it's good to show progress on roads, but that's an awful lot to spend.
Yeah, insanity.
Agree.
So the solution is, what we're recommending is to recall the RFP for the 2022 plan and just scale back the paving program, so we use whatever funds we have available right now instead of committing any additional funds to that. And then again, once the audit's done, we'll see where all the fund balances and the shape of each fund lies. I mean, one of the fortunate things we've been doing in the past with the paving fund is we're finally putting property tax money in it, and this current year, we're putting 200,000, so we're starting to make that dent we need to make and continue that progress. But again, like Dave said, to pay the prices that they're asking right now is just, it doesn't make a lot of sense to do that.
Agree.
Questions on any of that?
And we need to make that decision soon, right? We get outside of season for bids.
Well,
It's
unless
not
there's
like-
unless there's an objection or a direction to go otherwise, we will pull the paving RFP off the street and then try to decide where we're gonna go with what monies we have.
And the reason for that, just so you know, the bid opening is scheduled it's online bid opening March 10th. But we could send an addendum out tomorrow, canceling the bid, therefore the contractors aren't gonna spend all the time and money trying to put a bid together and something we probably weren't gonna award anyway.
I think that's wise.
Sense.
Yes.
Okay, equipment replacement, as I kind of mentioned before, we were planning on doing a lot with $2 million in equipment certificates for 2022. We've decided to not do that actually in 2022 because of the reasons we've talked about. However, we do need to proceed with the fire engines replacements. We have engine 1 and engine 3 that need to be replaced. They are 14 and 24 years old, and the maintenance costs on those are continuing to rise and cost us thousands more dollars every year. Again, this is a case where we're looking possibly at a 10% increase. It's trending as a 10% increase. So in the information we sent you, a $750,000 truck may end up being an $825,000 truck. Again, we'll have to see when we actually put these specs together and then have the bid. Hopefully, maybe some of that might recess as, again, parts and supply chain and labor and all that improve. But we're recommending we go forward with at least still speccing the fire trucks. Now, placing an order for the fire trucks, we don't put money down when we order. Al, I think the first payment's not due until he's not here. Sorry, I thought he was sitting there. But we have at least a year before a payment, and we won't be paying anything this year once we spec that truck out. It won't see a payment until 2023. At that point, if it's a partial payment, we have the equipment fund that can cover that. But then again, also, we will be looking at bonding and equipment certificates for issuance in 2023. I think you can fully expect that 2023, we will have to do a bond if we want to continue to resolve our paving issues and our equipment issues and our, maybe our water issues. But don't be surprised when we come back in 2023 and say we need bonding. And it's just what we plan to do for this year. It just makes more financial sense to wait. That's pretty much it. We've talked about the plow trucks a bit before. We talked about why we were doing bonding. Questions, any other direction you want to give us, but that's kind of how we laid out. I wish I had better news for you here, but I think this is the practical path to go.
I think everybody knows about this inflation thing when you look at your gas bill.
Yeah.
You know, that's up, what, 30 to 40% from last year. It's amazing.
Agree, I also agree with moving ahead with the fire truck. Councilmember Husnick will remember what it's like when we all of a sudden had a couple of years ago, we had a fire truck that had to get taken out of commission and we scrambled to replace, and that supply is tight. So keeping that moving and keeping us in queue, I think makes sense.
Yeah, and we do have a partner with the fire department, with Columbus, so they need some certainty on what we're doing as
Yes.
well, so we want to continue that certainty.
Agree.
Is there going to be a meeting with those folks anytime soon, then, with the joint powers
Uh,
because of this? I
I
mean,
I have to ask Al what his
Yeah.
plans are for
I-
that.
I'm just thinking that maybe that might have to happen, you know?
Yeah, if
Probably
those
true.
numbers are fluctuating that much, it might be worth having another session with
I agree.
Columbus just to,
No, it's because it's not a standard
correct,
time or anything.
Not,
correct. Any other questions or feedback points for Patrick, Ryan, team? All right. Yes, wish that were better news, but thank you for the practical advice, and I think we've got some solid steps. All right, let's move on to staff updates, and we'll start with Karen.
No updates, just elections. Oh, and website stuff I've been working on. So we have a program that we use for the agenda management. When I sent out the link to you guys for accessing the agenda online, you may have noticed there was 2 links in that last email. The first one is the regular link that you would always use. Takes you to a section on our website to find all the agendas, minutes, the packet. We are working slowly towards moving out of software that we have, IQM2, which is for all the agenda management, moving everything out of IQM2 and utilizing Civic Plus, which is what runs our website. There's an agenda center in there. So it looks a little bit different when you click on that link. It appears a little bit different when you open it up. You'll still find the agenda packet in there, you'll still find the minutes in there eventually, and then you'll also eventually find the link to the videos for the meetings. But it's just gonna look a little bit different when you access that. And then I've also been working on updating some of the website content. So the boards and commission pages, when you go and take a look at those, if you ever do, those will look and appear a little bit different now as well, as we start working on taking care of the website, updating content, and eventually getting a whole new redesign on our website. So exciting. It's all gonna change. That's about it.
If I could make a comment,
Yeah.
I actually did go look at the boards and commissions page, and it looks great
Oh,
compared to what it
thanks.
used to look like.
Yeah, it's an improvement, for sure. I still have to add some content in there so that when you click on, so I'll have the staff liaison, and that will have the board members in there, and when you click on this, there's a little link that says more information. For the boards and the commission members, it's going to link back to the staff liaison, so that, they'll be directed back to that contact person, if anybody has questions, you know, so. Yeah, but it's a different look.
Excellent. Thank you, Karen. Dan?
Mayor, members of council, keeping on the website trend, here to announce that we are getting a new website redesign this year. I did talk to Civic Plus last week. We're in queue to start that work in June. It's about a 6-month process for them to start, from start to finish. When it's done, it'll be a brand-new navigation structure, brand-new photographs, content. Internally, staff will go start working on it now through June to get the content refreshed. They actually will build this site kind of behind the scenes, so our current site will stay live all the way through, and then we'll flip the switch and when we tell them to, or when they complete it, and we'll have the new structure there. So, new website forthcoming. I'm also reaching out to LATV and trying to partner with them on some images. I know they have quite a good image and video selection of drone footage. Try to pull more photography in. I'm also going to try to reach out to some local photographers as well, because when talking to Civic Plus and looking at their example sites, what really drives these redesign projects is compelling photography, and working on getting that compelling photography database so we can start making that site look and function better, but also the big part of that on top of just a look, also looking at the analytics in the background, saying what pages aren't we using, what content aren't we looking at, what we're not updating, and getting that off the site and making the site probably shrink the footprint pretty significantly, but make it much more efficient. And then moving forward, and I know this is really in the weeds, but they integrated with Google Analytics, which I'm more familiar with, so we'll have better reporting to keep the site evergreen moving forward as well. So it's gonna be a big project. It's probably gonna take from now, probably the end of '22 is when they thought it would go live for the new one. But as we go through that, there will be some content updates that happen as a result of that project. So look for a brand new website at the end of this year.
Good. Excellent. Pete?
Your Honor, no update this evening.
All right. Thank you, Pete. Patrick?
No update, but I've given you way too much bad news already.
All right. Dave?
2 updates. The ice rinks are done for the year, so we're not maintaining them anymore. They can still use them if they want, but they're, I'm getting feedback here, but, so we're done maintaining them. Since last time we talked, Water Plant 2 is back online now, so it's the first time in about a little over 2 years since we've had all 3 plants operational all at once, running full, so just in time for the summertime, but they just have a little punch list work left, and that project should be complete. That's all I have.
Very good. Thank you, Dave. Ryan? Go ahead.
Will we get an update on Castlewood at any point in time? I don't know where we are status-wise on that, and I am getting a lot of questions.
Yep, so
Timeline.
the shell is up. We plan on doing plumbing work once the frost comes out, and then the concrete floor, and then framing and HVAC and electrical and all that. So I believe you're gonna aim for a spring of '23 opening. To be conservative, I think if we could rush it up, but it's probably gonna cost more money to try to get people in, and we're trying to do it with staff and try to space it out, so. Hoping by fall, winter, it'll be pretty much complete, which will give the city and Forest some time to get it all set up, and, maybe they do start doing some simulator stuff over the winter, but I would plan on a spring of '23 for the golfing season.
Okay, great, thanks, helpful.
Ryan?
Mayor, City Council, it just seems like we're just dealing with development. So on a positive note, there's a lot of exciting projects coming down the pipeline. 2 that'll still be coming as preliminary plat to you guys. You've seen one on one of the subdivisions so far at preliminary plat level. I would say the next 2 are the ones that have the most exciting features coming with the pedestrian facilities through these areas and the open space. So something unique, and I think will sell well, so that's
Excellent.
positive. That's all I got.
Love it. Thank you. Chief Peterson?
Yeah, Mayor and City Council members, since our last meeting, the Forest Lake Rotary Club held their Winter Plunge event. Friday was, last Friday, or 2 Fridays ago, was set up, and Saturday was the actual event. And then the kids' Pro Ice Snowmobile Racing event was held Saturday and Sunday that weekend as well. They're both very successful, well-attended, and no safety or security issues at all, so that's great. And thanks to Dave Adams and his Public Works employees for helping us out with cleaning off the sidewalks and making sure that the sidewalks down to the event for the Winter Plunge were safe. Other than that, no other updates for you, unless you have questions for me.
Thank you, Chief. Kim?
Yes, I have no updates unless you guys have any questions.
Any questions for Kim? All right. And Kevin?
Mayor, City Council, I just want to say I've enjoyed my first 2 weeks here at the city. The finance staff is working very hard to get caught up to speed with all the new positions we have. I just want to tell Kim how great a job she's doing, getting me up to speed with some things, and also helping our staff serve the citizens of the city of Forest Lake.
Excellent. Thank you. Let's bring it back for council updates, and we'll start with Councilmember Munson.
Yep, I attended the Planning Commission last Wednesday, and I'll keep with the theme of development, so agree with the water treatment. Yeah, very busy agendas.
Very good. Councilmember Byström.
Nothing from me.
All right. Councilmember Husnick.
I have nothing tonight, so.
All right. Councilmember Valento.
Nothing from me.
All right. Nice job in the plunge.
Thanks.
And I also don't have any updates this evening. So we are ready to move into closed session. Would somebody like to make a motion?
I move to close the meeting pursuant to Minnesota Statute Section 13D.05 Subdivision 3B for a confidential attorney-client discussion regarding pending litigation in the matter Lighthouse Lofts LLC versus City of Forest Lake, Court File Number 82-CV-21-723. The closed meeting will be held in the Forest Lake Room and will commence immediately. Once the closed meeting is completed, the City Council will reconvene the open meeting portion of tonight's City Council meeting in council chambers. There being no further items on the agenda, once back in open session, the council will simply adjourn the meeting.
A second it.
A motion and a second. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose, and we're in closed session.